They sat me at the kids' table at my cousin's wedding, and I had almost made my peace with it by the time the bride's widowed mother crossed the whole reception hall, pulled out a folding chair, and sat down next to me like she'd been assigned there her entire life. I want to be honest about that first part. I saw the place card before anyone had to explain the joke to me. Table 9. A round table pushed into the corner by the coat rack, decorated with a paper tablecloth the color of a traffic cone, ringed by 6 children under the age of 10 and 1 laminated card that said, in a font somebody had clearly enjoyed choosing, Sam. My name is Sam Whitlock. I was 40 years old that October. I teach high school shop 3 towns down the river, and I had driven 90 minutes in the rain to watch my cousin Colin get married in a banquet hall that smelled like carpet cleaner and warm chicken. I am divorced. Not the interesting kind. There's no villain in my story, no other man, no thrown lamp. Mara wanted Columbus and a life with more people in it, and I wanted a garage with good light and a table saw that didn't bind, and one morning we finally admitted out loud that those were 2 different addresses. She's fine. I'm fine. We send each other a text on the other's birthday and mean it. That's the whole tragedy. I'm not bitter. I'm just tired in the particular way of a man who has spent a lot of years being the reasonable one at other people's celebrations. So when Aunt Brenda, the family's official organizer, a woman who wears a coral blazer to everything including, I assume, sleep, steered me toward the corner with her hand on my shoulder and said, "We ran a little short at the grown-up tables, Han, but you're so good with kids." I did not make a scene. I sat. I unfolded the tiny cloth napkin. I said hello to a boy named Dominic, who informed me immediately that he could dislocate his own thumb, and I said that was a valuable skill and I hoped he'd use it responsibly. Here is the thing nobody tells you about being seated at the kids' table at 40. From the corner, you can see the whole room. And the whole room, it turns out, can see you. I felt it start the way you feel weather change. That little ripple that moves through a crowd when they've decided something is about to be funny. Cousins nudging cousins. A phone tilting up. Somebody at table 2 laughing before anything had happened, which is how you know the anything is aimed at you. I kept my eyes on Dominic, who was now explaining that his sister was, and I quote, not allowed near the fountain. And I thought, all right, Sam, you can eat a piece of cake with some children and drive home. Dignity is mostly just refusing to give a room the thing it came for. Then the head table moved. The bride's mother stood up. I knew who she was because I'd seen her in the receiving line, Delia Rourke, the mother of the bride, the one everybody at these things refers to in a lowered voice as the poor thing and the widow and so brave, being here. She was 58, though I didn't know that yet. She had iron gray hair cut blunt to the jaw, a dark green dress that did not apologize for anything, and reading glasses hanging from a chain like she meant to get some work done at her own daughter's wedding. She was not a small woman, and she did not carry herself like she wished she were. She had the stillness of somebody who had already decided, a long time ago, not to give a room the satisfaction of watching her flinch. I recognized it because I'd been practicing the same thing for 6 years, and I'm not nearly as good at it. She picked up a folding chair from against the wall. She carried it across the entire floor, past table 2, past the coral blazer, past every phone that had tilted up expecting me to be the show, and she set it down at table 9, in the corner, by the coat rack, and she sat in it. The room did the thing. That shift, that tiny collective lean people make when they think they are about to watch something interesting happen to somebody who deserves it. I've spent my whole life reading rooms, and I have never felt one lean harder than that one leaned right then. They thought they were about to watch the sad divorced cousin and the sad widowed mother be sad together in the corner. A 2-for-1. A punchline that stacked. Delia set her wine glass down on the traffic cone tablecloth. She looked at the Sam card. She looked at me, and she said, dry as a chalkboard. They tell me this is where the interesting people are kept. I could have played the room's game. Made a self-deprecating crack, let them have their laugh, absorbed it like I usually do. Instead, I stood up, all the way up, pushed my chair back and stood, and I picked up her wine glass and moved it to the spot in front of the chair she'd taken, and I pulled that chair out another inch, the way you do for somebody, and I said, loud enough that the leaning room could hear every word, "Then they seated you correctly, ma'am. Everybody at this table can dislocate their own thumb. You're gonna fit right in, Dominic. God bless him. Dislocated his thumb on cue. There was a beat. The kind of silence where a room realizes the show it bought a ticket for is not the show it's going to get. And then Delia Rourke laughed, a real one, surprised out of her, low and rough like a drawer that hadn't been opened in a while, and the lean broke, and the phones came down, and table 2 went back to its chicken. Just like that. You flip a room by refusing to stand where it points. "Sit down, Mr. Whitlock," she said. "You're making the children nervous." "Sam," I said, sitting. "Delia." She put her reading glasses on, picked up the little laminated menu, and read it the way she'd probably read everything her whole life, which is to say suspiciously. "Chicken marsala or the vegetarian option," she said. It's remarkable how much confidence they had, printing that. "The chicken is neither. You an expert?" "I'm a printer," she said. "I notice when something's set wrong." She set the menu down. "That kerning is a crime, and the chicken's dry. I have thought about that sentence a lot since. I'm a printer. Present tense. From a woman everyone in that room had already filed under past. I didn't know yet that the present tense was mostly hope. I just knew that she'd said it like a fact, and I liked her for it before I'd finished my first roll." We talked at the kids' table, while 100 adults politely did not look at us and completely looked at us. I learned that the groom, my cousin Colin, was marrying her daughter Josie, which made Delia and me family in the loose Midwestern way where you're related to everyone at a wedding by the end of it. I learned that she'd driven herself, that her husband had died 2.5 years back, and that she said the word widow, the way you'd say the name of a job you'd been laid off from, a thing that had happened to her that she was tired of everybody defining her by. "Ray," she said, when a slow song started and the floor filled and nobody was listening to us anymore. "That was his name." Ray Rourke. We ran a print shop together on Water Street for 31 years. "Rourke Print." She turned her wine glass a slow quarter turn on the paper cloth. "You'd have liked him. He never once threw away anything that could be fixed. That sounds like a compliment or a warning." "It was our whole marriage," she said. "Both." Dominic asked her if she could dislocate her thumb. She said she could not, but that she could set a line of type upside down and backwards fast enough to make a grown man cry, and Dominic considered that and decided it was acceptable. Around 9, the little ones started melting the way they do, and the parents came to collect them one by one, and by 9:30 it was just the two of us at table 9 with the cake plates and the wilting centerpiece and the GJ playing to a floor that had thinned to the drunk and the devoted. "You'll want to go," Delia said. "It's a long drive back to wherever you keep your table saw." "I've got a while." I hadn't told her about the table saw. I filed that away. She'd been listening, at the corner table, closer than she let on. "You okay to drive?" "I've had 1 glass of bad wine in 3 hours, Sam. I could operate heavy machinery." "I do operate heavy machinery." She stood and gathered her little clutch and looked around the emptying hall the way you look at a room your daughter is now somebody's wife in. Something crossed her face and she put it away before it could finish. "Thank you for the chair thing," she said. "You didn't have to make a whole production. You made the production. I just gave it a better ending." She looked at me a second longer than the line deserved. "The shop's dying, if you want to know," she said, apropos of nothing, or apropos of everything. "The press hasn't run in 8 months. It jammed, and I can't fix it, and Ray's the only one who ever could, and he had the poor manners to die." She said it flat, like a printer noticing something set wrong. "There. Now you know something true about me. Everybody else here only knows the sad part." "What's the press?" I asked. She was already turning to go. "A Chandler and Price," she said. 10 by 15. Cast iron, treadle-fed, older than both of us put together, and currently the most expensive paperweight in the state of Ohio. "Why?" "Because I fix cast iron," I said. "It's most of what I do, actually. I teach kids to fix cast iron, and then I go home and fix more of it." Delia Rourke stood at the edge of the kids' table in her green dress with her reading glasses swinging on their chain, and for just a second the armor slipped and I saw the thing underneath it, which was not sadness. It was want, quickly hidden. The look of somebody who had trained herself not to ask for things because asking had stopped working. "Halstead Landing," she said. "Rourke Print, on Water Street." "There's a green door." She said it like she was daring me. "It'll be raining. It's always raining down by the river." "I'll find it," I said. "People say that," she said, and walked out into the parking lot, and I sat at the kids' table by myself for a minute with a piece of cake I hadn't touched, thinking that I had driven 90 minutes to be a joke and was leaving with an address. Halstead Landing is one of those Ohio river towns that used to make things and now mostly remembers making things. Brick fronts with the paint fading up the sides where an older sign used to be. A courthouse with a green copper roof. A river that is either beautiful or the color of coffee with too much cream, depending on how much it's rained. And it had rained. It always had. I came down Water Street on a Saturday morning, 10 days after the wedding, wipers going, and I found the green door right where she said it would be, between a shuttered shoe repair and a tax office that only opened in the spring. The window said Rourke print in gold leaf, chipped, and underneath it in smaller letters, fine letterpress, established 1961, and underneath that, taped up crooked from the inside, a piece of paper that said back in 15 minutes in a hand that had clearly not come back in 15 minutes for some time. I want to tell you I planned it, that I called first, that I was smooth about it. I did none of that. I just couldn't stop thinking about a Chandler and Price sitting dead in a room by the river with nobody left who could hear what was wrong with it. Machines talk if you know how to listen, and I have spent my whole adult life being the person a machine will talk to, which is maybe why I'm better with them than I was with a marriage. The door was unlocked. A bell over it did the thing bells do. And the smell hit me before my eyes adjusted. Ink and oil and old paper and cast iron. A green mineral smell. The smell of a place where things had been made by hand for 60 years. It's a specific smell. It gets into the walls. I stood in it for a second like a man walking into a church he didn't know he'd been missing. "We're closed," Delia said from the back. And then she came through the curtain wiping her hands on a rag and saw it was me and stopped. She had on a canvas apron gone black-gray at the belly, her sleeves pushed up, ink to the elbow, her reading glasses shoved up in her hair. Without the green dress and the wedding lighting, she looked less like a poor thing and more like what she actually was, which was a woman who worked. "Oh," she said. "It's you." "It's raining," I said. "You were right. I'm right about the weather and almost nothing else." She looked at me standing there, dripping on her mat with no umbrella like an idiot. "You drove down here. You gave me an address. I took it as an invitation. I might have been wrong." She was quiet a second, and I watched her decide something, the same way she decided to pick up a folding chair and carry it across a room. "Well," she said, "you're wet and you came a long way to look at a broken machine. That's either the saddest thing I've ever heard or the most useful. Come look at the saddest thing I've ever owned." The press was in the back room under a window that let in the gray river light. A Chandler and Price plate and press, 10 by 15, black cast iron with gold pinstriping worn down to ghosts, a flywheel as tall as Dominic and heavier than a Buick. It was beautiful. It was also, even from across the room, obviously miserable. There's a way a machine sits when it's been giving somebody grief. The platen was frozen half open. The rollers were gummed with dried ink gone to tar. And somewhere in the works, a metallic wrongness that I could feel before I found it, the way you can feel a splinter under skin. "It seized 8 months ago," Delia said, arms folded, staying back from it like it might say something she didn't want to hear. "Middle of a job. 200 programs for the Methodist Bicentennial. It made a sound like a bone breaking, and it hasn't turned since. I've had 2 men look at it. One wanted $4,000, and the other wanted to buy it for scrap and sell it to a decorator in Cincinnati who'd turn it into a coffee table." She said the word decorator like it was a communicable disease. I threw them both out. "Good," I said. I'd already taken my jacket off. I couldn't help it. "This is a coffee table the way you're a poor thing." That got me the drawer-opening laugh again. "Careful, Mr. Whitlock. Flattery's expensive down here." I spent the next hour with my hands in the guts of a 60-year-old press while Delia Rourke stood over me telling me things. She couldn't fix it, but she knew it. Knew it the way you know a person you've slept next to for 30 years. Every sound it made and what each one meant. "That's the flywheel bearing," she'd say, before I got there. "That knocks the treadle, not the gears." She handed me tools before I asked for them. And at some point, without ceremony, she set a mug of coffee down on the type cabinet beside me and picked up her own and stood there drinking it while I worked. I noticed the mugs because I notice things. Hers was a heavy diner mug, thick white porcelain gone tan inside from 1,000 pots, with a hairline crack running up one side and the word Rourke stamped on the bottom, the kind of mug a shop orders a case of and never replaces. Mine was different. Mine was a cheap souvenir mug, thin, a faded cartoon riverboat on the side, and the words "Greetings from the Ohio" in a font even worse than the wedding menu. They did not match. They did not come close to matching. One was a working mug, and one was a mug somebody bought as a joke on a day trip 40 years ago and never threw away because Ray Rourke never threw away anything that could still hold coffee. "That's Ray's," she said, when she saw me look at the riverboat. "He'd want you to have the ugly one." He'd say the guest gets the ugly mug because the ugly mug has more personality, and the guest needs all the personality they can get. He sounds like he was easy to be married to. He was impossible to be married to, she said, and smiled at the mug, not at me. Impossible is different from hard. Hard wears you out. Impossible keeps you interested, she drank. 31 years, and he never bored me once. Aggravated me daily. Never bored me. I found the C's. It was a sheared pin down in the throw-off mechanism, and behind it, wedged where it had no business being, a chip of type metal that had worked its way into the works and jammed everything solid, a little sliver of lead alloy that had killed a $200 Buick of a machine. I held it up in the light. "Here's your bone breaking," I said. "Your press ate a piece of itself." Delia came close, then closer than she'd stood the whole hour, and looked at the chip in my palm. "That's a piece of type," she said quietly. "That's a piece of a letter." She didn't touch it. 8 months I've been calling that machine a traitor, and it was choking. Nobody looked. They just wanted $4,000 or a coffee table. She straightened up and the armor came back over her face, but a beat too late, and we both saw that it had been down. "Can you fix it or not?" "I can fix it," I said. "Not today. I need to fabricate a pin, and I want to pull the rollers and recast them, and this treadle's going to fight me. But yes, it'll run again." She stared at the machine for a long moment. Then she picked up a tool off the cabinet, a slim thing, brass, worn bright at the edges, shaped like a little adjustable tray with a lip, and turned it over in her hands like a rosary. "This was his composing stick," she said. "You hold the type in it, letter by letter, backwards, to build a line. Everything printed in this shop for 31 years started in this stick, in his hand or mine." She set it back down, precisely in the exact spot it had been. "I keep meaning to put it in a drawer. I keep not doing it." "Don't," I said. "A tool that's still out is a tool that still has a job." She looked at me like I'd said something in a language she used to speak. "That's exactly the kind of thing Ray would say," she said. "And I don't know yet whether that makes me want to keep you around or throw you in the river." Then she pointed at a hook by the back door, where a flat cap hung, gray herringbone wool, soft with wear, the brim shaped by a head that wasn't there anymore. "That's his too, before you ask. And no, you can't have it." "Some things aren't for the guest." I wasn't going to ask. "Everybody asks eventually," she said. "That's how you find out what they want." I started coming down on Saturdays. I'd like to pretend there was a reason beyond the obvious. There wasn't. I told myself it was the press, that a machine like that deserved to run, that leaving it dead would be a kind of vandalism, and all of that was true, and none of it was the reason. The reason was that Halstead Landing was 90 minutes away, and for one day a week I got to be a man with his hands full in a warm room that smelled like ink, next to a woman who talked to me like I was worth the trouble of an argument. Saturdays went like this. I'd come in around 9, the bell would do its thing, and Delia would say, "We're closed," from the back without looking, and then she'd come out and see it was me and not say anything else about it. She'd have coffee going. She'd hand me the riverboat mug, Ray's mug, without being asked, and take the cracked white Rourke mug for herself, and for a few months I did not understand that this was the most intimate thing happening in my life. 2 mismatched mugs on a type cabinet, a man's ugly souvenir handed to the guest. It doesn't sound like anything. That's the trick of it. The real stuff never sounds like anything. I fabricated the pin in my shop at school on a Tuesday, on a lathe, while a sophomore named Trevor watched and asked why I was smiling. I recast the rollers over 3 weeks. I freed the treadle and cleaned 60 years of ink tar out of the works with a toothbrush and a patience I did not know I still owned. And every Saturday, the press came a little more alive under my hands, and every Saturday Delia stood a little closer while it did. She talked while I worked. That's how I learned her. She told me about Ray in pieces, never all at once, the way you'd feed a fire so it lasts. How he'd bought the C&P in 1961 from a shop in Wheeling and driven it home in a borrowed coal truck. How they'd printed the town's whole life through that press, wedding invitations, funeral programs, church bulletins, the menu for the diner up the street, business cards for men who were now dead, birth announcements for the children of children whose birth announcements they'd also printed. "We printed Josie's baptism and her graduation and her wedding," she said once, and then stopped, because she hadn't printed the wedding. Somebody in Murrieta had printed the wedding, on a machine that didn't smell like anything, because Rourke Prince Press had eaten a piece of itself and gone quiet, and Delia Rourke had to send her own daughter's invitations to a stranger. She didn't cry about it. She just went still in a way that was worse than crying, and turned Ray's composing stick a quarter turn on the cabinet and changed the subject. I met Josie on the 4th Saturday, the bride. She came in the green door in a rush of rain with a bag of groceries for her mother that Delia would never have asked for and would have died before admitting she needed, and she pulled up short when she saw me on my back under the press with my boots sticking out. "Mom," she said carefully. "There's a man under the machine." "That's Sam," Delia said, not looking up from the galley she was cleaning. "He's fixing the press. Don't step on him. He's useful." Josie had her mother's blunt jaw and none of her armor yet. She was young enough to still show everything on her face, and what her face showed, looking from me to her mother and back, was a kind of hope she was trying hard to keep casual. "Sam Whitlock," she said slowly. "From the wedding. The kids' table." "That's me," I said, from the floor. "I've been promoted to the print shop." Something moved across Josie's face, quick, and she covered it with a smile and started putting groceries away and asking her mother about the guttering. "But I filed it. I'm a room reader. I file things." And what I'd filed was that Josie Rourke had looked at me under her mother's dead press exactly the way you look at a plan that's going better than you dared to hope. I didn't understand it yet. I would. The town noticed me before I noticed the town noticing. Halstead Landing is small enough that a strange truck parked outside Rourke Print on Saturdays becomes a piece of information that travels. The man at the hardware store, when I came in for a tap and die set, said, "You're the fella been down at Delia's," not as a question. The waitress at the diner up the street, Ruth Ann, 60-something, a laugh like a screen door, started putting an extra coffee in front of the empty seat across from me before I'd said a word. "For whoever you're clearly waiting on, hon." And an old man named Cliff, who'd apparently run the town's other print shop back before the other print shop closed, stopped me on the sidewalk one rainy afternoon and said, "You get that C&P running again, you'll have done more for Delia Rourke than the whole casserole brigade did after Ray passed. Food don't fix loneliness. Sometimes a working machine does." Then he tipped his hat and walked off into the rain, and I stood there getting wet, thinking that Cliff had said in 2 sentences the thing I'd been driving 90 minutes each way for 3 months to avoid saying to myself. The rain drive happened in December. Delia mentioned, the way she mentioned everything that mattered, sideways and fast so it couldn't turn into a scene, that the last of Ray's tools weren't in the shop. That when he got sick, she'd cleared out the back workbench to make room for the hospital equipment they never ended up needing, and boxed his good tools, the roller gauges, the type-high gauge he'd machined himself, a whole case of hand tools, a set of engraver's gravers she'd never learned to use, and put them in a storage unit across the river in Kentucky, and never gone back. "I pay $11 a month to not open a door," she said. "That's the most honest budget line I've got." "We should go get them," I said. "I need the type-high gauge and I'm tired of eyeballing it." "We," she repeated. "You've got the key. I've got the truck. And whatever's in there, it'll fit in the works better than a stranger buying it for scrap." I kept my eyes on the Platon so she wouldn't have to keep hers on me. "You don't have to open the boxes. You just have to open the door. I'll do the boxes." She was quiet for a long time. Then she took the flat cap off the hook by the back door. Ray's cap, the gray herringbone, the one that wasn't for the guest, and instead of putting it on, she held it and said, "Bring the truck around Saturday, and bring the ugly mug. There's no coffee in Kentucky worth drinking, and I'm not stopping for it." We drove across the river in the rain, which is the only way I have ever driven anywhere with Delia Rourke. The Ohio was high and brown, and the bridge hummed under the tires, and she sat in my passenger seat with Ray's flat cap in her lap, turning it over and over, and told me about the first winter they'd owned the shop, when a pipe burst and froze the ink, and they'd printed a whole run of Christmas cards by hand-inking the type with a brayer because the rollers were solid, the two of them up all night with cold hands and a space heater, and how it was the best money they ever made and the closest they ever were. "You do a hard thing next to somebody," she said, watching the wipers, "and it's better than any vacation." Ray never understood people who wanted their marriage to be easy. He said easy was for strangers. The storage unit was a metal box in a row of metal boxes under a Kentucky sky the color of a nickel. Delia stood in front of the door with the key in her hand and did not put it in the lock. I let her not do it. I've learned that much, that sometimes the most useful thing you can do for a person is stand next to a locked door and not rush them. The rain came down on the metal roof loud as applause. And after a while, without a word, she handed me the key, and I opened the door, and the smell came out. Ray's smell, ink and oil, and the particular staleness of a life boxed up in a hurry, and Delia Rourke put her husband's flat cap on her own head, pulled the brim down, and stepped into the dark to help me carry him home box by box. We didn't talk much on the way back. She kept the cap on. I didn't mention it. And the ugly riverboat mug rode in the cup holder between us, empty, the whole way, and neither of us said the thing that both of us were beginning to be afraid of, which is that this had stopped being about a machine some time ago, and neither of us knew how to say so without breaking it. I found the letter in January. By then, the press was nearly whole. I'd fit Ray's type-high gauge into the work, and it had made everything easier, the way a good tool does, like the machine recognized the family. All that was left was the deep clean, pulling the ink disc, getting down into the base of the press where 60 years of oil had turned to a black geology. The part nobody cleans because you have to take half the machine apart to reach it, and no working shop can afford the downtime. But this shop hadn't worked in 8 months, and I had nothing but Saturdays, so I decided to do it right. I pulled the ink disc. I got down under the base with a light and wedged up in the hollow of the frame, above the treadle bar where no ink ever reaches and no hand ever goes, held in place with a twist of the same soft wire ray used to tie up type forms. There was a flat tin box, a tobacco tin, gone to rust at the corners, the kind of thing a man keeps because it's the right size for small parts. I almost left it. I thought it was small parts. It rattled wrong. Parts don't rattle like paper. "Delia," I said, and something in my voice brought her over from the type case fast, wiping her hands. I worked the wire loose and brought the tin out into the gray window light and held it out to her without opening it, because it wasn't mine to open. This was inside the press, down in the base. Ray put it there. Whatever it is, he wanted it to stay dry, and he wanted it to stay hidden, and he wired it in himself. "It's yours." She took the tin like it was hot. She looked at it a long time. Then she sat down, hard, on the printer's stool, and pried the lid, and inside there was a single envelope, folded once to fit, yellowed, and across the front in a printer's careful hand, not written but set, hand set in type and printed, a little crooked, one letter slightly high the way handwork always is. It said just one word, "Delia." "He set my name," she whispered. "He didn't write it." He set it, in type, on the press. She pressed her hand flat over her mouth, the exact gesture I'd see later in her daughter. That's a whole afternoon's work, setting one word to print it once. That impossible, impossible man. She didn't open it right away. She held it, and I watched her decide, and I stood up and said I'd give her the room, and she said, without looking up, "Don't you dare," in a voice with no armor left in it at all. So I sat back down on an overturned crate and I stayed. She opened it. She read it to herself first, and her shoulders went. And then, and this is the part I'll carry to my own grave, she read it out loud to me. A stranger she'd known for 3 months, in the ink-smelling dark of a January afternoon, because some things are too heavy to hold with only your own 2 hands. "Delia," she read. If you're reading this, then the press finally beat me, or I finally beat the press, one of the two, and either way, somebody good enough to take it apart came along to find this, so be nice to them. She stopped. She looked at me. I looked at the floor, because there are moments you have no right to witness, even when you've been ordered to. She kept going. "I've been sick longer than I've told you, and I'm sorry for that. It was cowardice dressed up as protecting you, which is the only suit cowardice owns. I'm not writing to say goodbye. I'm a printer. I don't have the words. I only have other men's words set in a stick. I'm writing to give you an instruction. And you know, I never once in 31 years gave you an instruction that stuck, so consider this my last shot. Do not turn yourself into a monument to me. Do not run this shop into the ground alone out of loyalty to a dead man who'd rather you were warm. You are the best hand I ever saw at this trade and the most stubborn person I ever loved, and those are the same sentence. When somebody comes along who can hear what a machine is saying, and they will, our kind finds each other. Let them. Let them in. I fixed everything in your life for 31 years, Delia, and the one thing I couldn't fix was how hard you make it for anybody to do a single thing for you. Let somebody. It won't be me. Let it be somebody. That's the whole letter. I've been setting it a line a day for a month so you wouldn't catch me. The kerning's a crime and I don't care. Yours, and I mean that word the way we mean it, Ray. The rain came down on the roof. Neither of us said anything for a long time. The press stood between us half apart, its base open like a chest, and I understood that I had been fixing a machine that had been holding a letter that was, in the plainest terms, addressed to me too, in a way. Our kind finds each other. Let them in. "He knew," Delia finally said. Her voice was wrecked and steady at the same time, which I didn't know a voice could be. 2 years I've been telling this town I'm fine. 2 years of casseroles and I'm fine. And that man saw all the way down to the bottom of me from inside a tin box in the dark. She laughed. One broken note. Let somebody. He might as well have carved it in the door. I should have said something worthy of the moment. What I said was, "Delia, I have to tell you something, and I'm going to say it badly. Because I couldn't sit inside that letter and keep pretending. I don't come here for the press. I finished the hard part of the press in November. I've been finding reasons since. I come here for the coffee and the ugly mug and the way you tell me I'm useful like it costs you something. I come here for you. That's the whole letter. The kerning's a crime and I don't care either. And that, of course, was the exact moment the bell over the door did its thing, and Josie came in out of the rain and stopped dead, taking in the scene. Her mother on the stool with a yellowed letter, both of us with faces like weather, the press torn open, the tin tobacco box on the cabinet. She went pale. And then, to my complete confusion, she said the strangest possible sentence. "Okay," Josie said. "Okay, I have to tell you both something before this goes any further and it comes out wrong. It was me, the seating, at the wedding. It was me, and I need you to know why before you find out some other way and hate me." Delia looked up, letter in hand. "What are you talking about?" Josie stayed by the door like she needed it behind her. "The kids' table," she said, looking at me. "That wasn't Aunt Brenda running short on seats. I told her we were short. I made the place cards. I put you at table 9 on purpose, Sam." Her voice was shaking, but she pushed it out. "And I switched Mom's card, too. She was supposed to be at the head table all night, next to me, being the sad mother of the bride that everybody feels sorry for and nobody actually talks to. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand the idea of my mom sitting up there like a widow on display at her own daughter's wedding while everybody at the good tables performed being sad for her. A tear went down her face and she let it. So I put the one person I'd met who seemed decent and quiet and kind of tired in the worst seat in the room, and I told my mother, right before dinner, that table 9 looked like it needed rescuing. That's all. I wanted her to have somebody to actually talk to for one night instead of being the point of everybody's pity. I didn't think it would. I didn't plan for. She gestured at the two of us, the letter, the whole warm, ruined room. "I just wanted you not to be alone for one dinner, Mom. It was love. I know it looked like a joke. Everybody thought it was a joke. It was the opposite of a joke. The room had leaned, that day in October, expecting to watch two lonely people be humiliated in a corner. And the truth, sitting in front of me in a print shop in January, was that a daughter had loved her mother so much she'd disguised the kindness as a cruelty so nobody, least of all her proud mother, would be able to refuse it. Delia would never have accepted a fix-up. She'd have thrown the setup in the river the same way she threw out the scrap man. So Josie had made it look like an accident. She'd made it look like a joke. She'd counted on her mother being unable to leave a lonely stranger sitting alone in a corner because Josie knew exactly the one thing that could still move Delia Rourke, which was somebody else's loneliness, never her own. Delia sat very still with her dead husband's letter in one hand. Then she started to laugh and cry, both, the two things she seemed to only ever do together. "The two of you," she said, "him from a tin box and you from a place card, ganging up on me from two directions. I raised a schemer and I married a schemer, and now they've found each other across the grave to run one last con on a widow." She wiped her face with an inky hand, leaving a gray streak. "Josie, come here." Josie crossed the room and knelt by the stool and put her head in her mother's lap the way she must have as a child, and Delia put her hand in her daughter's hair, and I got up off the crate and went to the front of the shop to look out the green door at the rain and give them the room, this time for real, no orders to stay. I stood there a long time, and I thought. I came 90 minutes to be a punchline, and instead I'd been the setup for the best sentence anybody ever wrote me, and neither the punchline nor the setup had been mine. I'd just been the man who showed up when the machine finally had somebody to talk to. I should have known it was too clean. The next Saturday, the shop was locked. The back in 15-minute sign was in the window, and the lights were off, and my truck was the only one on Water Street in the rain. I called. It went to the shop's answering machine. Ray's voice still on it after 2.5 years. "You've reached Rourke Print. We're at the press. Leave it with us," which told you something about a woman who'd keep a dead man's voice on the machine but couldn't say out loud that she was fine. I waited an hour. I drove home. She called me Sunday night. I could hear it in the first word. Sam, flat. Armored. The voice from the wedding. The one that had decided a long time ago not to let a room see it flinch, except now the room was me. "I've signed papers," she said. No lead up. Delia Rourke does not lead up to things. "I signed them in November, actually. Before you finish the press. I've been sitting on it," which was cowardice dressed up as timing, and I learned that trick from an expert. A breath. "I'm selling the shop. The building's got a buyer, a couple from Columbus who want to make it a wine bar and keep the old press in the corner for atmosphere. For a coffee table, essentially, that you can't sit at. And I'm moving to Louisville, to my sister Faye's. She's got a room. She's had a room for 2 years. I keep saying no, and I'm out of reasons to keep saying no. The rain was on my roof too, 90 minutes upriver. Delia. Don't. I heard the stool creak. She was in the shop, in the dark, with the press she'd just told me she was selling. You want me to say it wasn't real, the Saturdays. It was real. That's the problem, Sam. It got real and I did the math. Her voice cracked once and she hammered it flat again. I'm 58. My knees are going. This trade is dying, and I'm the last one in this town who can still hear a machine, and after me, there's nobody. And you've got a whole life, a job, a shop with good light, and you'd drive 90 minutes each way to a river town to take care of a widow and a dying press until one day it wouldn't be love anymore. It'd be a chore. I'd be a chore. I have watched what a person does when the thing they love turns into a chore they're too decent to put down. I did it to Ray at the end, God forgive me, and I will not be that for you. I will not become the $11 a month you pay to not open a door. That's not, you don't know yet, she said, gentler, which was worse. That's the whole cruelty of it. You're too decent to know yet. So I'm knowing it for both of us. A pause. Ray's letter said, let somebody. It didn't say ruin somebody. There's a difference and I'm old enough to see it and you're not. Go home, Sam. Fix your own cast iron. You did a good thing here. The press runs. That was the job. The job's done. She hung up before I could tell her that the job had never once been the press. I want to tell you I fought. I didn't. Not right away. That's the part I'm not proud of. I'm a decent man, and decent men have a coward's move built right into the decency. We call it respect. We call it giving somebody space. I told myself I was respecting her decision. What I was actually doing was the same thing I'd done with Mara and the same thing Ray had done with his diagnosis, dressing up cowardice in the only suit it owns. I went home and I did not drive down the next Saturday, or the one after. The weeks went gray. There's no drama to report. That's how you know it's the real kind of sad. Nothing happens. I taught shop. I fixed cast iron. I came home to a garage with good light and nobody in it. The riverboat mug sat in my truck's cup holder where I'd left it, the ugly one. Ray's one, the guest's one, and I couldn't bring myself to move it and couldn't bring myself to look at it, so it just rode around with me, empty, for 3 weeks, a souvenir of the Ohio from a woman who'd told me to go home. Trevor asked me on a Tuesday why I wasn't smiling anymore, and I told him I'd finished a project, and he said projects come and go. Mr. Whitlock, which is either the dumbest or the wisest thing a 16-year-old ever said to me, and I still don't know which. Josie called me on a Thursday. She thinks she's protecting you, the bride said. It's the only love she trusts, the kind that costs her something. Being taken care of costs her nothing, so she can't believe in it. You have to make her believe you want the cost, Sam. She closes on the building in 9 days. The truck comes for the press on Saturday. She's going to stand there and watch them take it and call it the right thing to do. A breath. I already tried a place card. It's your turn. I drove down that Saturday in the worst rain of the winter. The kind where the wipers give up and the river and the sky are the same brown nothing. And I made it to Water Street a little after 9, and there was a flatbed truck backed up to the green door and 2 men in ponchos with a pallet jack, and Delia Rourke standing in the doorway of her own shop in Ray's flat cap, watching them come to take. The last thing she and her husband had built with their 4 hands. I got out. I left the truck door open. I walked up through the rain and stood in front of her under the little overhang where the water ran off in a sheet between us and the street, and I didn't touch her, and I said, "Tell those men to come back in an hour. I'll pay them to get coffee." Sam. She wouldn't look at me. Go home. I keep going home, I said. I've got a whole house of going home. I'm sick of it. Delia, look at me. She looked at me. The cap brim dripped. Her face was doing the thing where it decides not to flinch, and it was losing. You said you'd become a chore, I said. You said you did the math. Here's my math. I've driven this river road so many times my truck could do it asleep. I put a mug I don't own in my cup holder, and I've carried it around for a month because throwing it out felt like a funeral. I fixed a machine in November and lied about it till January, so I'd have a reason to keep coming back to a woman who hands me an ugly cup like it's a state secret. That's not a man who's going to get tired, Delia. That's a man who already knows and drove 90 minutes in the worst rain of the year to say it. You don't get to do the math for both of us. That's not respect. That's just you deciding to be alone in a language that sounds like kindness. I've spoken that language my whole life. I'm fluent. Don't try it on me. Her jaw worked. The men in ponchos had stopped, sensing weather. You'll resent me, she said, but it came out thin. Everybody eventually resents the thing they carry. Ray didn't. That landed. Her eyes filled, and she let the rain hide it, or tried to. Ray was Ray wired a letter into a press to reach you from the dark because he ran out of afternoons to say it in the light, I said. He didn't call you a chore. He called you the best hand he ever saw and the most stubborn person he ever loved and said those were the same sentence. He didn't spend 31 years carrying you, Delia. He spent 31 years standing next to you doing a hard thing, which he said was better than any vacation. I want the hard thing. I don't want easy. Easy's for strangers. I watched her hear her own dead husband's words come out of my mouth, and I watched the armor finally give. I'm not asking to take care of you. I'm asking to stand next to you and get my hands dirty. There's a difference, and you're old enough to see it. She was crying now and not hiding it, which from Delia Rourke was the loudest thing in the world. I don't know how to be wanted, she said. It came out of her like it had been said a line a day for 2.5 years, waiting for a press to print it. I know how to be needed. I know how to be the one who fixes it and holds it up and never asks. Ray needed me. This town needs the shop. Josie needed a mother. I know needed. Nobody ever just wanted me in the room. And I don't trust it. I keep waiting for wanted to turn back into needed and then into chore, because that's the only order I've ever seen it go in. The rain came down between us and off the brim of a dead man's cap, and the men in ponchos had the grace to study their pallet jack, and I did the only true thing I had left. Then let me be the first, I said. Stay because I want you here. Not the shop, not the press. You. Stay in the room, Delia, because I want you in it. And I'll want you in it on the days you're not fixing anything and not holding anything up and not being useful to a single soul. Especially those days. Stay because I want you here. For a long moment she didn't move, and the rain filled the silence the way it does, and I thought I'd lost. Then Delia Rourke reached out with one inky hand and took hold of the front of my wet jacket. Not a hug, not a kiss, just a fist in the fabric like a woman grabbing the rail of a boat, and she turned her head to the men in the ponchos and said, in a voice that had found its floor again, "Gentlemen, there's been a change of plans. The press stays. There's $40 in it for you if you get that flatbed off my sidewalk before it drips oil where my customers park." They took the $40. Of course they did. She didn't let go of my jacket. She stood in her own doorway with her husband's cap on her head and her daughter's scheme in her past and my whole heart in her fist, and she said, quieter, just to me, "I'm going to be difficult. You should know that going in. I'm difficult and I'm proud, and I will do the math again in the middle of the night at least 400 more times. I'll be there for the recount," I said, "and I'm keeping the ugly mug in the truck. That's mine now. You lost it. It was always yours," I said. "I was just holding it till you'd take it." She let go of the jacket then, only to put both her hands flat against it, and she leaned her forehead against my chest under the overhang the way I'd watched her daughter lean into her lap, and I put my arms around Delia Rourke in the doorway of Rourke Print with the rain coming down on Water Street, and I did not kiss her, because some things you don't rush even when you've waited too long already. And we just stood there in the ink smell and the wet and the sound of a flatbed pulling away without the thing it came for. We called off the sale that week. The couple from Columbus found some other charming ruin to put a wine bar in, and on a gray Saturday in March, with Josie perched on the printer's stool and Ruth Ann from the diner leaning in the green door with 2 cups of coffee she hadn't been asked for, Delia and I ran the Chandler and Price for the first time in 14 months. She set the type herself, in Ray's brass composing stick, the one that had never gone into a drawer because a tool that's still out still has a job. She set it backwards and upside down fast enough to make a grown man cry, exactly like she'd promised Dominic at the kids' table she could. I inked the rollers I'd recast with my own hands, and when she threw the treadle and the flywheel came around and the platen kissed the paper and lifted, the press made a sound I'd never heard it make, a clean iron heartbeat, 60-some years old and not dead after all, just waiting for the shop to have 2 people in it again. What we printed, that first good run, was our own wedding invitation. Delia said it. I mixed the ink. The kerning was a crime and neither of us cared. It said that Delia Rourke and Sam Whitlock would be married at Rourke Print on Water Street. Come as you are, the press will be running, and at the bottom, in 8-point type she set without telling me until it came off the platen, it said, "Seating is assigned, the interesting people are kept in the corner." We married in the shop in June. Not many people. Josie and Colin, Ruth Ann, Cliff, who told me a working machine fixes what a casserole can't, Faye down from Louisville who cried and told me I'd stolen her spare room's whole reason for being. Delia wore green. I wore a tie for the first time since the wedding where I'd met her. And when the small crowd went quiet, I did the one thing I'd been saving since October, since a folding chair carried across a room, since a courtly line at a kid's table. I kissed her, once, real, my hand at her jaw and her hand fisted in my collar out of habit now instead of fear, in the ink smell, next to the press, and the whole room did the lean, that shift people make when they think they're about to watch something. Except this time, what they got to watch was the thing they'd been rooting for all along. That was 2 years ago. We keep the shop. It doesn't get rich. Letterpress never does. But the town brings us their weddings and their funerals and their birth announcements again, their whole life run through Ray's press by 4 hands, and it's enough. And enough is a thing I spent a long time not believing in. Ray's flat cap hangs on the hook by the back door where it belongs, except on the coldest mornings, when I come in and find Delia at the case with it pulled down over her ears, and she looks at me over the top of her reading glasses and dares me to say a word, and I never do. Ray's letter is framed on the wall by the press. One word set in slightly crooked type, Delia, and under the glass the whole thing, let somebody, so anybody who comes in can read the instruction that started it all. And every morning, on the type cabinet, there are 2 mugs. A cracked white one that says Rourke on the bottom, and an ugly souvenir one with a faded riverboat and greetings from a river we both live on now. They don't match. They never will. That's the trick of it. The real stuff never matches, and it never sounds like anything. And if you're lucky and stubborn and willing to do the hard thing standing next to somebody, it runs like cast iron for the rest of your life. So here's what I want to ask you, sitting wherever you're sitting. Have you ever been put in the corner, sat at the worst table, written off as the sad one, the tired one, the leftover, only to have the whole thing turn out to be the best seat in the room? Have you ever mistaken somebody's love for a joke, or hidden your own love inside one so it couldn't be refused? Tell me about it in the comments. I read them at the shop, in the morning, with the ugly mug. And if this one meant something to you, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next table over.